Okay, once again, welcome. This month's Wildlife for Lunch webinars on oil and gas from a landowner's perspective, presented by Jay Evans. He's the president of Jay Evans Company. This month's Wildlife for Lunch webinar is made possible through funding provided by the San Antonio Livestock Exposition Incorporated, and it's hosted by the Texas Wildlife Association and Texas A&M AgriLife Extension. With that, Jay, I'll pass the controls over to you, and you are good to go.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, just fine.
Okay, great. Thanks, Clint, and thanks all the sponsors and San Antonio Livestock Show and Exposition. It's dear to my heart, so I appreciate them being involved. Of course, TWA and AgriLife, and you, Clint, for all your patience and working me through all this technological process. But especially thanks for everybody that signed on. Be thinking as we go through here, your questions and comments are going to be important, and that's what will make this work if we can have some. I think where our benefit will come might be from your input and some discussion at the end. Briefly, we're going to try to center on landowner guidelines. I like to look at it as coexisting with the oil and gas industry and companies as they develop minerals on all of our land, and private and public. The major topics will kind of be around planning, habitat preservation, reclamation, and surface use issues as a part of that. The first part of the presentation is based on the Voluntary Conservation Practices Brochure that was produced by Texas Parks and Wildlife, their Private Lands Committee. They put this out. It's been a year and a half now. I think it's been very beneficial to landowners from an awareness standpoint, and kind of used as a guideline as we work through some of these issues. Toward the end, we're going to get a little bit of specifics on surface use agreements, and then we're going to talk just a little bit about water. Let me see here. Let's see, Clint, to move it.
You use the arrow on the top of the screen there.
Got
there you go, Jay.
Thank you. This is the overall deal. It's what it says. Is just how I looked at it was balancing of grazing, of livestock, wildlife conservation, and habitat management with the oil and gas industry in Texas. I want to also say this original PowerPoint was done. Dr. Fred Bryant, Caesar Clayburg, and Forrest Smith, also from Caesar Clayburg, South Texas natives. Appreciate them. I could have never put this together. We've tweaked it and modified it, but keep referring to it. It's all around and available, and we've got it out there for landowner awareness and for information. So, excuse me there. This is Dr. Bryant's quote. I stole it from him, but I think it's pretty important when he talks about the conservation of natural resources. Why are voluntary conservation practices important? This is the oil and gas is a long-term business. I think we can, if we're proactive, maybe we can avoid some endangered species listing. I think we avoided the listing. We still got it as the prairie chicken issue, but it didn't get listed as endangered. It's on the, I guess you'd call it on the watch list right below the final listing, but that's better than having it on endangered. Habitat preservation, and then water quality and quantity. So that's why I think it's important. Why did we do this bulletin? Originally for landowners, especially those who were not working under a good lease and or a surface use agreement. For some of the new people that were getting new leases, for the most part where they were represented well, they had good surface use agreements. But there's a lot of people down there all across the state of Texas that own surface and no minerals. And so this was, we put this out there to try to, for awareness and to help give some guidance to landowners all across the state. I'll make one comment, might probably come up again, but when we originally did this, it was the Caesar Clayburgh Wildlife Research Institute was a big part of it, and as we said, Texas Parks and Wildlife. But it was based around the Eagle Ford, and there was so much happening so fast, and for South Texas. But we're getting ready to come out with a statewide voluntary conservation practice brochure. It won't be extremely different, but it'll be more geared toward a statewide program. And it's with the technology and everything that's going on now, what we're seeing in South Texas and saw in the Barnett, we're going to see in a lot of parts of the state. It's already changed the Permian Basin again. So horizontal drilling and just the technology that they have is going to impact us on a statewide basis. I think some of the keys we've listed here, the planning. Sometimes it's an opportunity to do some things on your property you haven't been able to do before. I can't overstress the communication side of it. Obviously, you want to work on keeping your property secure. The manage and monitor is huge. You can have the best agreement in the world, but if you don't manage it and monitor it, it won't work. Joseph Fitzsimmons told me I needed to add this replan because it will change. Reclamation is huge, and we get into that a whole lot here later on in the presentation. And then we all know how important our water is to us. So I do think as we go through this, and I've tried to emphasize this, that we need to appreciate the importance of the oil and gas business, especially in Texas, how it serves as an economic driver for Texas and private lands conservation. So that's why I go with the coexistence angle on this. It's a big part of the economy of Texas. The communication, I'm going to go back to the landowner side of it, is that guy on the ground too, that guy or gal on the ground. Quite often they don't have a copy of your agreement, but they need one. And I always try to do, people I represent, or in my own case, do a pre-development conference before they move in, get the people on the ground you're going to be doing. In the case of a pipeline, do a pre-construction conference. The kind of the management goals that I try to lay out when I'm talking to landowners is they're just listed right there. Hopefully you can keep using the properties you intended, get compensated. I like to encourage people to take a portion of this mineral income and our surface use damages, put it back into the land. Obviously being a good steward. And one of the first things, if we don't have an agreement, that's, I try to understand everybody's goals, the landowner goals, and then go to work on the surface use agreement. The quicker that you can get something in writing, the better off you're going to be. This is just a oil and gas map of Texas, and you can see obviously the Eagle Ford down there in the Permian Basin. The Barnett is reflected up there, and then the northern Panhandle. But I do feel like that we're gonna see some expansion. We look at that map in 5 years, and I think it'll be substantially different. These are just kind of highlighting. And one thing, let me say here that not trying to go too fast, but I do want to get to the part where we can get some interaction. But this presentation, Clint's going to get it. It'll be on the TWA website via the YouTube, I think, and then the Voluntary Conservation Practices Brochure is on TWA. It's on Texas Parks and Wildlife, and it's also on. And it doesn't mirror this presentation exactly, but it's close. And it's also will be on Jay at J Evans Co. You can take a look at it there. So it's going to be there for you to refer to if we don't get into. Just would rather have the chance to discuss at the end rather than too much detail. But you see it there. There's just a lot of opportunity to do harm if we don't do it right. This is just kind of a picture that shows the comparison of loss of habitat kind of before and after. If you've been in the Eagle Ford, you've seen this several times. It got somewhat enhanced during the drought, and so it's one of the things we've got to work on. You'll see a lot of emphasis here, a lot of discussion today on topsoil, and you just need to, in my mind, we need to take all efforts that we can, just make every effort we can to be sure that we preserve that. This was just kind of a slide to say, choose what you lose wisely, stay with your goals. What are your landowner goals? The more successful operations that I see have a balanced approach to livestock and wildlife. I think they're very complementary to one another, and that's just what I see from it. It's not always that way, but I see some real successes where those things are balanced. I think it's important that we keep our lands in production, but so you consider that in your landowner goals, and what you'll see some stuff in a minute how you may want to try to direct this to the extent that you can. But this is just some, for example, if there's a pre-disturbed site or an old crop field, if you can direct production that way, that's a good way. Your riparian areas and your really productive soils, if there's any way that you can avoid those. And you're seeing a lot of willingness from oil and gas companies to develop along the boundary and or in corridors. One thing I say in that regard is, this is just it helps me keep my mind right, but see if we can manage from the ground up and not just from the deer or the turkey or the cow down. And it helps me keep things in perspective and look at it, I think, a little bit better. If I'm looking at what my forage, my grasses, my brush, if I'm looking from the ground up, I tend to have a better perspective. This is just some more areas that we try to avoid. If it's not in your lease or in your surface use agreement, if you can get it in there in some form or fashion, I think it will serve you well. Here were, some of the disturbance and degradation, issues. You're taking land out of production. You obviously got some loss of vegetation. One thing I try to do is, and this is why you see it presented like this on the screen, is for every problem out there, rather than just go raise cane, which you'll get an opportunity to do that if they're on your land, but try to see if you can offer solutions. And planning and communication is key around that. So I think if you can come up with a solution for that, you will have problems. But I found that for the most part that there's opportunities to work on those if we're willing to be part of the solution. These are some things to think about from a disturbance standpoint. I think it's the initial operations can truly, why the planning and the forethought comes in, can really have an impact on your ability to mitigate. Understanding soil types, how you do your clearing, even, seismic is slowed down now, but it was huge early on. A lot of people dozed, a lot of people chopped. That becomes a personal thing, but get informed, get educated, and be sure that those early on actions are thought through and you've got a long-term vision of those acts. We've learned the salinity down there in some of our deeper soils is more of an issue than I know I originally thought, and it doesn't take much to contaminate salinity that's down below, to contaminate your soil to the extent that it can't be used, and that creates a real problem with your re-veg and reclamation. I can't emphasize again enough the topsoil management. They're doing Forrest Smith and his people down at Caesar Clayburgh are doing some research right now about stockpiling versus trying to leave in place and then recapturing. But I think we'll be seeing some more on that in the future. Kind of getting a little bit duplicate here, but just those initial operations and invasive plants and how it can be brought in. I see it come in a lot in the caliche, where you get ironweed and goldenweed, some of those that can really be a problem. Road control, I think, is important, especially along your creeks. And then a lot of people like to do a baseline vegetation entry reference for your restoration deal. The other thing I'd say is have a plan. You know, they talk about we've got fire plans and emergency plans and everything. I think if you can have thought through how you're going to react to a spill or water disposal, anything like that could be hazardous, if you've thought through that in advance and communicated with the operator about it, it will serve you. It will serve you well. Restoration, again, we kind of talk about problems and solutions. So it comes back to some of those same issues: planning, monitoring, and taking care of that topsoil. Being the Caesar Clayburgh was a huge part of the process originally, and Dr. Bryan, as well as Forrest Smith, who's I'm going to just say is a tremendous asset. If you need any help, reach out to Forrest. His website will be shown here. He'll even talk to the oil companies for you and the pipeline people and help you establish specific specs. He is committed and passionate about all this. But so we put in there, it's always a landowner choice what you go. Well, if you get it in your agreement, it will be. But I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to put out some pros and cons. But obviously, the institute they started the South Texas Natives program, so there was a lot of emphasis on natives, especially when you look at the wildlife aspect of it. We're going to get into some native versus exotic. One thing here, it's kind of highlighted there in green, but it's your choice, not theirs, be in control of the reseeding. I'm finding that the operators, pipeline and the oil field, they will pay you to do the reclamation. You have better control over it. You can do it at the right time. You know, pipeline comes through, they finish in June, they want to seed right there before they leave, and as we know, it's certainly not the best time in South Texas to do that. So there's a lot of opportunity, and they'll pay you. The risk is that you don't get a stand the first time, and we've certainly had some issues with that due to the drought-related issues. There's some breakdown on native versus exotic, some advantages. I think wildlife people are very aware of the advantages of it and what it can do. It does cost more. Availability is getting a lot better, especially in South Texas. As we move to West Texas and Central Texas, you'll see in a minute they're working on it, but the availability is not what it is due to the South Texas Natives program. Kind of got a 10-year head start on all of this. It's challenging to establish. It's even more challenging if you've got an intensive livestock program trying to work around that. But you just need to think through that, have it in your plan, and if it's and how important is it in your goal. Some of the native versus exotics, again, exotics are cheaper, but they can get out of hand. We know what we've dealt with from our highways and KR blue stem all over the state. But they can be good forage. The exotics can provide great forage and cover in times of drought that you may not have with some of the native, but in many cases they don't have the value for our wildlife. So you know, where, and that long-term vision again, be out there. What is your long-term goal? What do you think impacts the value of your land the most? This is all stuff you can refer back to. Caesar Clayburgh has an excellent website on it. There's a Plants and Materials Center at Knox City. We're going to see a map here in a second, but that's a second resource kind of for the Panhandle and North Texas. Do your work on this seeding. Either there's people out there that will come do it professionally, or but do your research. One thing that Forrest and them are just talk to Forrest. But one thing that you know, they figured out that late August, early September is a great time to plant, that we have less risk of losing young plants due to freeze. This is South Texas, due to freeze in South Texas versus summer heat and dry spells. It's going to be different for different parts of the state, but that's it's out there, and you can but do your homework. This shows kind of the South Texas natives has been expanded to Texas native seeds. That just shows the areas that it does. For the area that's out of the darker green in the top, the Panhandle type deal, that's where I would refer you to the you know, the Bud Seeley deal there at Knox City. They've got some good information there, and you can certainly look at that. This is just for the Texas natives. You see Mia down there in West Texas in Collin also, but you can get to all of that through the Caesar Clayburgh Wildlife Research Institute website, and like I said, I can't tell you how willing Forrest is to help anybody that needs it, and we can you can certainly refer to that and get some of that information later. There's the James E. Bud Smith Plant Material Center at Knox City. You can get it through the NRCS, but that kind of will help you in the South Plains Panhandle area that hadn't got that far. Here's just stuck them in there for looks. There's some examples for success, and all the planning and research and studying won't do us much good without the rain, but fortunately here lately we've been on the little better side of that on a statewide program. As you people up in the Panhandle and far west Texas, it was Dust Bowl time here. These recent rains that started Memorial Day and it really covered a lot of the area. You know, east of the interstate was in pretty good shape, but except for the southeast part. But and we're all, I'm hearing, you know, we're all kind of griping and ready for another one. But at least we seem to be in a little better trend right now, and we've got some El Nino predicted. So hopefully Mother Nature will give us a little bit of help as we move forward with the restoration process. This is just kind of a know your agreement and rights. Understand you know, any existing agreements that are related to the mineral and surface, and just understand all your rights. Communicate. I think it's good to communicate with the oil and gas company in this regard. Be sure that y'all have a good understanding. And then as you move through this process, don't be afraid to seek help. And sometimes your neighbors are a great resource. So there's, and just one of the reasons for the Voluntary Conservation Practices Program was for this thing too. I like to go back and revisit my goals every once in a while. Be sure I'm not wandering from that, but it's what we talked about. What's the intended use of your property? And man, that can be a challenge when they're drilling and fracking in the middle of hunting season. So, but know that if it's not in your surface use agreement or in your lease, that can happen. So how do you plan around that? And all that starts early. Once again, you know, get paid, reinvest it. Hate to be repetitious, say the topsoil and all those things that we've talked about before. Here's just some of the key reminders. Back up again. I have found that there's really an opportunity in some of this to get some things done. One thing we started doing with a client of mine, down at Catarina, they were at a hub of pipelines, and it just came one right after another. I'm not as mad at pipelines as I used to be because of the financial aspect of it, but trying to learn about reclamation and how we do it. But we actually, instead of putting them in a corridor, we separated those pipelines and would leave, depending upon all the issues involved, but sometimes 100 to 50 yards to 150 yards between them. And when it was all said and done, it kind of looked like we'd gone in there and stripped it, and just like you would. So just don't be scared to be creative in your approach and think a little bit out of the box. Can't emphasize security enough, especially during the antler season. The managing and the monitoring and that communication, especially with those people on the ground. I've found in a lot of cases you can get more done on the ground than you can sometimes even in your agreement. I do think habitat preservation is for the long term. Remember that the impact can go beyond the actual area of development. Restoration takes a lot of patience and vision. To succeed, I don't think you can view exploration and production as the terminal use of the land. Try to look out past the current situation and where you can see your wildlife and recreation and agriculture as the primary use. I've said this once before, but I'll say it again. I strongly believe that we need to keep our lands in production, and by that I mean wildlife and agriculture production, not just oil and gas production. I want to give a little credit before we move into surface use and water. This Private Lands Advisory Committee was just really, they took this thing on and championed it, and I'm really appreciative of all they did. Out of that, we did a task force, and if you look on that list, you see a lot of people that tend to get their hands dirty from time to time, and we had attorneys and farmers and ranchers and Parks and Wildlife and NRCS. It was a good group, and so I want to say thanks to them, and then the stakeholders. Oil and gas industry was involved. And thanks to Carter Smith, he went, in the case of the Eagle document, he went to all the major players down there, and they had they were pleased with. I think we changed it from best management practices was their main thing to voluntary conservation practices, which I really liked better when we got it all said and done. Cattle raisers and TWA, you see them right there too, and you can, when you look down that list, it's a pretty. It was kind of a pretty varied group. I can't say enough about the support we got from Carter Smith, the executive director for TWA, and Linda Campbell. She's the program director for the private lands, and let me tell you, none of this would have happened without Linda. She's a real trooper, and when you see her around, be sure and tell her thank you. She doesn't take a lot of credit. She stays behind the scenes, but she gets it done. When I look at mineral development, I say Texas needs the oil and gas industry. Can we have mineral development and establish and preserve the habitat? I believe we can. The surface use agreement is one of those ways, and I'll go back and say I do focus on the surface use agreement, I guess, because that's where a lot of my work is. The people that got a new lease, they've got their agreement built into that lease, and for the most part, it's a manage and monitor for them. The challenge becomes is where you don't. You get a call and you find out that they're moving in 2 weeks to start drilling a well, and you have no minerals, very low minerals, and you're working on an old lease. And even when you have an old lease, we've had some success redoing surface use agreements, reworking them, and just getting them renegotiated for the most part. Surface use agreement. Okay, these are just some things I throw out there. Get good counsel. Use the brochure, the VCP brochure. It's a great guide. I'm excited to get the statewide brochure out for all you people that are central and west and north. The one that's there now is useful, but we're going to try to have some more specifics. It will probably follow this presentation a little bit closer. We've tried to tweak this presentation as we've gone. Don't forget about your indemnity, insurance, security, and access. A lot of these we've covered, but they're pretty comprehensive, and I am convinced that for the most part, a lot of the oil and gas companies want to do the right thing. They've got they're in the headlines. They've got a lot of pressure on them from what I consider landowners being I think wildlife people and ranchers are the best environmentalists out there. So there's some pressure, but $100 oil doesn't hurt anything. It makes them a little more willing to do things that maybe they couldn't do when it was less economic. Don't be afraid to prohibit certain things. Sometimes it's not what you want; it's also what you don't want. There's got some wording in some surface use agreements that says mutually agreeable. Now, you got to be reasonable, but at least it enhances the communication before major activities take place. Water is always something that it's very involved. You got price, ponds, restrictive use, joint use. Once again, I'm convinced that it's only as good as your ability to. It's only as good as your ability to communicate, manage, and monitor. But from a surface use agreement standpoint, do your homework. I think that's important. But a negotiated surface use agreement will provide you some certainty for both sides. Somewhat levels the playing field between landowner and operator. This is a long-term relationship. In most cases, I like to think that both parties eventually will need something. And if you can't get everything that you want in the original deal, be patient, have your list ready, and there'll be a time where they'll come to you for something, and that'll be your opportunity to work on your wish list a little bit. Know that going in, you probably won't get it all. So know your priorities, and have them in mind when you're working on your agreement. I threw a little bit in about water just because it's so important. I think that it's important that we understand the issues and the facts. There's a lot of things that are not factual out there about water. So understand those issues and educate yourself. Have some good long range goals on your water and secure your rights under Texas law. TWA, cattle raisers, the Farm Bureau, many others, but they worked really hard in the 11 legislature and got the House bills, Senate Bill 338, and then the Supreme Court that was favorable for landowners related to that you own the water under your land. And not long after that, the Supreme Court gave a favorable ruling. So you've got good rights. It is your water if it hadn't been segregated. So learn and then further than that, learn the rules of your groundwater conservation district. In a lot of cases, there's opportunities to go ahead and secure a long-standing position on what you can develop in the way of your water, depending upon where you are. But know your groundwater conservation district if you have one. When I look at water and oil and gas industry, in the Eagle Ford, the numbers were huge on the amount of use. But when you compared it to a lot of other things, it had a lot of the press had blown that use out of proportion. The good news is that we've got brackish water showing up on the scene, and as usual, the oil and gas industry, if there's a way to figure it out, they will. They're doing a lot of research and development, largely because economics drive it, but also because it's the right thing to do. I think that got intensified through our drought of the last 3 years. They're working toward conservation. I've seen fracs now with new chemicals and process and all that, that use has been reduced 50% and sometimes greater. But they're innovative and they've made some big strides, and I think they'll continue to do so. We need to remember that you know the surface. I don't think I said this earlier, but the surface is subordinated to the minerals. So they've got the mineral estate is dominant over the surface estate. So we have to remember that as we go through the process. This is my future quail guide here, my granddaughter, but we've got to take care of this next generation, and I think that's her little sister. We just got to seek to do no permanent harm for those that follow after they're coming. So, Clint, I think I might have. We're here at 12:45. Clint, can you help me? I think I lost my picture.
Yeah, it went away on my end too. I'm not sure exactly why.
Huh. Let me see if I can do something here. I apologize. Really, that was it. The last thing had it was just my phone number and the website. It's jevansco.com. You can reach me by phone or email at j@jevansco.com, and my phone is 512-469-9867. And I just say that if you got some follow-up questions, or if I can help direct you in the right direction and get to some of this information too. There's also, and on that website on jevansco.com, you'll see a reference to an April and a May issue of the Texas Southwest Cattle Raiser Association, that Cattleman's magazine, and both of those there is a great article in the I'm sorry, it's March and May. In the March issue, it's about surface use agreement, protect your land, surface loss. It's a lot of what we covered today, but in more detail. It's an excellent. It's just an excellent article, I thought. And then in the May issue, it's lessons from the Eagle Ford, and I participated in that as Forrest Smith and some others did too. But it's about communication, cooperation, conservation, and both of those articles refer a lot to the. See if I can go back up. They refer a lot to the voluntary conservation practices. Clint, I can't get any pictures up. I'm sorry. I'm sure it might have been operator error on this end.
No, it seems to be something going on with WebEx, so I'm not sure. I tried going back a while ago and it wouldn't allow me either.
Okay. But that being said, we got a few minutes here. I don't know if anything's coming in on the chat box, but I'd certainly love to open it up for questions and discussion.
Sure. Okay. We had one or a couple questions come in. The first one, to your knowledge, are there still going to be oil rigs in state parks? Do you know anything about that?
I do not. I really don't know. You know, I can't answer that.
Okay. We'll move on to the next one. Will the industry sign surface use agreement?
And that's really the majority of the people that I end up working with. And the law says they have I'll go a little further. They have the mineral is dominant to the surface estate, but there's also the accommodation doctrine, and it just says to the best of their ability and within reasonableness, they're going to accommodate that landowner. So we kind of take that and take it to the next step. The other thing is they want to get along for the most part. I do think it's important that once you get a surface use agreement, and if they're functioning as per the agreement, I found that if you can help them do their job more efficiently and better, it's good. In other words, what's the incentive for them to do a surface use agreement? Well, they got an understanding of what they can and can't do. It reduces the conflict if it's managed and communicated properly, and there's some certainty for them. And I think over in the long term, they're gonna be more profitable if they're getting along and cooperating, and because they're going to need stuff. So I think if it's there, then I think it's to their advantage too. But yes, you can definitely. There's no law that requires it. All we have now is the accommodation doctrine, but you can definitely get one done.
Okay. That's all the questions we have for now. We've still got some time. I encourage everybody, if you have some more questions, just go ahead and post them up in the chat window. While y'all are thinking about some questions that come, excuse me, I'll remind everybody that this program and all the other programs that we've done for the Wildlife for Lunch webinars will be posted on the TWA website. And so you'll be able to go back, go through this presentation again and check it out. The next program that we're going to do is going to be on August 21st. It's going to cover cattle grazing and wildlife habitat. It's going to be presented by Jason Holt. Excuse me. Just a couple more minutes. If anybody has any more questions, please feel free to jump in here now. We'll give it just a little bit of time.
I saw one comment. Let me clarify something on that. The question was, will oil and gas companies sign a surface use agreement if you don't have mineral rights or you don't have minerals, you're surface only? And I quickly said yes, because it can done, but it's not every time. And I've got a couple of cases that were they just wouldn't do it, and it was part of their policy. So it's not every case. In one case where they wouldn't do it, I was able to get them to agree to ranch rules, and that we got a lot of stuff in there that we wanted. Just even if you at least you got speed limit and that they're going to pay you to reclaim, but there were some ranch rules. Sometimes you can take that approach, and then the other thing I'd tell you, if they're being that way and they're behaving like that, keep your powder dry. At some point in time, they're going to need something, and when they do, or when they really mess up, then you've got to hold them accountable, and that sometimes is what will allow you to get some of your goals accomplished.
Okay, we had another one come in. So in West Texas, one of the biggest discussions at this time is concerns about the amount of water used during fracking due to the drought that we're currently in. Why is there not more water being reused at this time?
That's a great question, and part of it is that when this first started and the chemical balance they were using, they were not doing a good job of reuse and reclamation. As time has gone, at least in the Eagle Ford, I can't specifically say West Texas, but they have made a lot of progress, and have changed the gel mix and the chemical mix, and where they've got some brackish water, they're trying to do some blending there. So it's to their benefit, and I think there's some economics, and especially in the areas where the water is not as abundant. You know, over the Carrizo, they didn't have much incentive at first because they could go real well about anywhere, and there was a quote unquote a huge supply there, but I'm seeing them make some progress in that, and I think I said before, I'm seeing some cases where their use is 50%, and it's more of the way I think they're designing their chemicals, but they are also working on some reuse projects down there. One of the things that created that was it was so far to get the flow back, the salt water, to haul it off in a lot of cases. So it's not just using the water, but what they got to do with that disposal. So there's environmental pressure, there's landowner pressure, there's being a good steward pressure, and there's economic pressure, and I think that they'll continue to make progress in that area.
Okay. Of landowners' existing stock ponds.
Yes, they do not have the right. Typically, it is held up in a lot of cases that they can't come take your surface water. They can drill. They have the right to drill wells and obtain water in order to develop the lease. In other words, they can come in, drill a well themselves, put their own pump in it, and they can pump that water to develop the minerals. There have been some questions as the Eagle Ford started, that case law and that goes way back in Texas oil and gas law. Most of what we operate is under in the oil and gas business is old case law. But a lot of people are saying, okay, when that was done, we were using 10 or 15,000 barrels to drill a well, and that's what it says. Do they have the same right related to fracking? And to my knowledge, it's never been tested in court yet. But I know that question looms around out there. But they do not have the right to come take your surface water. They do have the right to drill a well to develop the minerals. Did that?
Okay.
I think I can see the chat deal now if that answered it.
I believe so. Let's see, where am I at? So what if a neighbor signs a lease and installs equipment right next to the property fence and subsequently a house? Is there any potential effects of that, or I guess anything you can do about that?
Wow, that's a toughie, especially if it's already been done. I'd have to lean on my legal friends for that, and I think it would be a case by case deal. But I would think you would have some rights if they become a nuisance, whether it's from dust or noise. I would think you would have some rights there. But that's really a legal question. I haven't had to deal with that one particular on a neighbor fence situation. But you see there is a lot of development along those outside corridors. There's no question about it. But hopefully they're doing it the right way and keeping their dust down and using noise suppressors on their compressors. I don't know of any health effects. There was a couple of lawsuits in the Eagle Ford, up in the Barnett related to that, but I can't really speak to that. If there was a question, I think go ahead. That next one, Clint, is a recent proposed lease agreement specifies that non-hazardous waste may be spread on the property and land farm. This seems to be a bad idea for the landowners. This is a common practice. Most landowners are shipping that waste, and there's non-hazardous and hazardous, but a lot of people are taking them allowed on their land, and they are taking it to what they call a land farm. It's not EPA, but Texas, the TCEQ approved land farms where they actually biscuit and treat it and go through all the stuff to restore it. There are some things that I think can be that are non-hazardous, and certain uses of your drilling mud, if it's water-based, not oil-based. Water-based drilling mud can be used. It almost serves like a bentonite in some cases. but it's still got to be dealt with properly. So I just would caution you before you agree to that you you understand exactly what's contained in it, and you're able to manage it and monitor it. If it's questionable at all, most of the people that I deal with, they're asking them to remove it. The next one was Devin was using some portable distillation units for reuse. I can't speak to if they've put that or not. I am not personally dealing with Devin on any of their stuff, but I do know that there's several that are sure looking into those portable units to help them with their water. But I can't answer if they're continuing to do that.
All right. Well, that looks like it wraps it up, Jay. Oh, we had one more that jumped in here. When the pad was installed, the natural contour of the land was altered. What can I expect them to do to restore it back to its natural condition?
Okay, say that. Oh, the pad was installed, the natural contour. In most of your agreements, it's going to say that it needs to be restored back to the when they do interference. But you've got to. I guess the answer to that is they've got to still be able to access their well and get to it. In other words, you can't restore it. But what I try to do in that case is once they get it all in and stuff, then come in and downsize the pad, remove all the caliche, get your topsoil back on the other areas, and then make that transition. Say if they had to do a 4-foot cut or fill, at least on your fill side, be sure that you take it out there and get topsoil over that and get reimplanted. So try to make a transition so that it's not a severe difference where that contour was impacted, and to where it's not, it's reasonable for them not to block the flow of water or interfere with the creek. But sometimes it's hard to take a pad back to the natural condition and still allow them to maintain access to the well side and produce it. But if it's a big enough pad and you leave enough room around it, there's some cases where you can get that done. Most surface use agreements will address that where there's major disturbance, then they've got to return it to that original contour.
Okay.
Dan, I think I tried to. I saw my friend Dan made a comment. I think where the one about I think there was one to where that you were unable to get somebody to do a surface use agreement with one of the companies, and I tried to address that. There are some that won't, and the only thing I can recommend there is keep your eye out for something that they're going to need, and it's an opportunity. But Dan, if there was something more than that, type it in or give me a call. 512-694-1964, or anybody's welcome to email me too, Jay@JEvansCo. So